Good evening, and welcome to our continuing series with Alok, Explorations in Savitri. This must be the 78th or so. Namaste.
So Savitri is an endless ocean. I think we'll forget the counts.
Yes, I think it's better.
I think one word which Shobinda has used at places in Savitri and elsewhere needs to be clarified. Words like hell, sin, God. Shobinda is not saying that there is, a hell where people who are condemned, they go, who are evildoers. He's not talking of hell in that sense. But, and also he's not talking of sin in the way it is understood morally and ethically. Yes. He is using the word hell in the sense of a domain of consciousness. They are typal words like heavens. And in these typal worlds, the energies, the beings, the forces, they represent or manifest that level of consciousness. And they also have a kind of religion, a philosophy, a theory at that level. That's what he's describing us. And for each domain, there is a appropriate thought construct, belief system, ideology, theory, practice, actions, and of course a religion and a god. Because it's a whole evolutionary hierarchy. And he has already spoken of religions, he has spoken of certain theories, scientific and otherwise, which are basically springing from these domains. They influence human beings, influence their mind and thoughts, and propagate themselves into the world. Because this earth is a battlefield. All the forces from all the domains press upon earth to take hold of matter. So, what is so special about matter? Because matter contains within it all the other domains. That's the beauty of matter. And this is the place of evolutionary struggle. It's the field of manifestation of the divine. So all the forces press upon it, and through all this evolution takes place on the basis of matter. More so earth, because earth has, in addition to matter, the psychic presence. So all these beings try to take hold of human minds, human thoughts, human hearts, human actions, human impulses, so that they can extend their reign outwardly and equally, forces of light, forces of darkness from all the domains. So right now, Aurobindo is revealing to us the forces of darkness and how they work and act. And the purpose of all this is so that we can recognize them. We know how to get rid of them. We know where is the danger sign. That is the whole purpose. So we are on page 214.
A race possessed.
Yes. A race possessed inhabited those parts. See, now this one line, it can apply to a domain, it can apply to a space on earth, because in earth there is a space for everything. It can also apply to a time context. There have been periods of life in the history of earth when mankind was largely demonic. So, it applies at several levels. So, a race possessed, inhabited those parts. A force, demonic, lurking in man's depths, that heaves suppressed by the heart's human law. Beautiful lines, see?
Beautiful.
Heart's human law, what is it? Law of kindness, of mercy, of gentleness. But there is this force which is waiting for its turn. But as we become more and more humanized, it exercises a suppressing influence. You see how Aurobindo says Christ from his cross humanized Europe.
Yes.
Now look at, Europe on those days when somebody could be sent to guillotine because he is speaking of freedom. What was Christ speaking? Freedom, divinity, light, love. He was not some of the most beautiful, eternal, cherished values.
Yes.
And yet, he has to be sent to cross along with two thieves.
Yeah.
What would be the state of consciousness of humanity at that point of time? But Christ from his cross humanized Europe. So with that human law, now you see the same area now speaks about, compassion and, people should not be capital punishment should not be there, the stock of freedom. Why? Because this is occult action. So there is a human law which holds it.
And even we have much earlier the cross, their payment for
Yes,
the
for the
crown
crown.
they gave.
Yes.
Only they leave behind a splendid name.
Yes. So we have this line that heaves, suppressed by the heart's human law, awed by the calm and sovereign eyes of thought, can, in a fire and earthquake of the soul, arise and, calling to its native night, overthrow the reason, occupy the life, and stamp its hoof on nature's shaking ground. This was for them their being's flaming core. So while in human beings it is there but suppressed in some dark subconscious region. But for these beings it was their core, flaming core. They drew their energies from that. In Indian thought there is this story that in Ravana, where was his store of energy? It was in his navel. So every time Rama tries to kill him by cutting off his head, or in the heart he would not shoot. Look at his love. He said in his heart he is in love with Sita. How can I kill him by piercing through the heart? That is how Rama doesn't pierce an arrow through the heart. He says because he loves Sita. And Sita dwells in his heart. How can I kill him? But head, it still survives. So till Vibhishana comes and tells him his power is neither in the head nor in the heart. His power is in the navel, in the dark lower vital. There are people who draw energy from there. And for these beings, this was their flaming core. And he gives us another very interesting hint. Reason has a great place in the yoga, in human life. Where it errs is where it tries to judge divine things. It's not the office of reason to judge divine things. But reason is meant to subdue the vital, to make it less unruly, more disciplined,
yes.
not wild. So,
Yes.
but there are moments when reason is overthrown, and in a moment of fire and earthquake of the soul. That's how he describes.
And he uses the word hoof.
Hoof, yes. And stamp its hoof on nature's shaking ground. That's right. A mighty energy, a monster god. So there is a god there, but that god is a monster. Some of the religions develop along lines of a monster god because their level of evolution is that. So a mighty energy, and it's a tremendous, a powerful energy. We should not underestimate hell. Hard to the strong, implacable to the weak. So we were reading the other day Ravana, and Ravana says that I worship you, Rudra, because you are terrible and mighty. You are the mightiest of Rakshasas. And I promise you that I'll do whatever you ask me to do, except for if you tell me to spare the weak. I'm not going to spare them. Because I know your law is not kindness, but power. So I will eliminate the weak. I'll eliminate the Brahmin. I'll eliminate the God lovers because they are sentimental fools. That's how he says. This is love, to, sacrifice in front of you, harshness. So this
Sounds like World War II.
Yeah. Hard to the strong, implacable to the weak. It stared at the harsh, unpitying world it made with the stony eyelids of its fixed idea. Stony eyelids of its fixed idea. Dogmas. When mother was asked, Mother, what is your opinion about fashion? So she said, thankfully I have no opinions. Of course, she would reply to one state of consciousness to another. Then somebody asked, what is this, Mother? Yesterday you told this, today you are saying something very different. So why did you change your opinions? Mother said, because they are not opinions. When things change, I change because I have to keep with the law of truth. So one day somebody comes and mother would tell her very, what people would interpret as her anger or something. Next day, she would be very different. Amal Kiran gives this wonderful example. Yes. He says that, when he went with some changes in Savitri and he suggested, and mother said like a veritable Mahakali. Yeah. She said, she used the word morons. She said, you want to correct Sure, Aurobindo, you think she didn't know something like that, and they were shaken to the core.
I won't allow you to change
Even a comma. Even a comma. So then he tried to say, Mother, but these are things which Sure Aurobindo himself did not really go through, and he left it unfinished. So mother said, how do you know that he didn't intend it to leave unfinished? That how do you know his intention, divine intention? So he remained quiet, he went away. He says, but the same divine mother, much later, when he came, because 54 edition was, it was going into 72, and he went with certain things, certain changes based on the readings. She says he was so full of compassion. She said, all right, she approved these things. So you can't decide by that moment, because the divine is not dogmatic. But we want to create a dogma out of the divine. And so he uses the word fixed idea. Thus thou shalt be and thus thou shalt not be. This is where...
I have a good story of Champaklal. You
Yes.
probably know it. Champaklal said, Mother hated plastic flowers.
Yes, I know it, but it'll be worthwhile sharing. It's a beautiful story.
And so he said everyone took that as dogma. And then they started making more and more beautiful plastic flowers. And Mother said, oh, they're very beautiful.
And he says that had I left the ashram at that point and come back much later,
Yeah.
I would have never understood her action. So, fixed ideas are one of the signs of hell's trademark. There are many he will give us. Its heart was drunk with a dire hunger's wine. That's why, the giants, they are known for the appetites. This appetite is not only about physical food, it's about emotions. They want to eat. They want to eat on the vital, they want to eat on the emotions, they want to eat on the energies, because that's how they feel strong. So, hunger, dire hunger. In others, suffering, felt a thrill delight, and of death and ruin the grandiose music heard. So for them, that is music to the ear. So this is the cult of these demonic race. To have power, to be master, was soul, virtue and good. It claimed the whole world for evil's living room. So power is something one is never satisfied with. People often point out one of the things which leads to ruin or downfall in yoga is sexuality, lust of this kind. Lust has many connotations, sexual act. So when this was asked to Sri Aurobindo about lust, he said, yes, but ambition stands on the same level. So ambition goes unnoticed because nobody even sees it. And this could be an ambition to be a yogi. It could be an ambition to be a great sadhak, to be recognized, to dominion, to possess, to expand one's empire. And all that he's saying, it claimed the whole world. It's not satisfied. So people often, how many followers? It can be, people who want more and more followers to come. So how dangerous this can be. Then he's showing us what kind of political party. Its party's grim totalitarian reign, the cruel destiny of breathing things. So I'll read these 4 lines which run in a... It claimed the whole world for evil's living room. Its party's grim totalitarian reign, the cruel destiny of breathing things. So, it's a kind of dictatorship, but a dictatorship which is hard, fixed in its thought and ruthless, and there is no room, no scope for self-improvement, no scope for evolution or change. Totalitarian. All on one plan was shaped and standardized under a dark dictatorship's breathless weight. And just for information, during the Second World War, we had 3 of them, these Asuric powers, Hitler, Mussolini and Stalin. So when mother was asked about Stalin and Hitler vis-a-vis, she said, well, Stalin is directly a position of, projection of these beings. What about Hitler? He has some human side left in him. Imagine. So Hitler had some human aspect, however, whatever crude it was. But this Stalin was directly the dark forces which have incarnated.
If I'm correct, I think Mother said he had no soul.
He had no soul. He was an incarnation of these dark forces. Whereas Hitler had a soul of a very primitive brute. Shobit use the word London cabman, but anyways, he had a very crude. That's why he had love for Eva. He had
For his
sentimental. They are very
dogs.
for his cat. He was very sentimentality is the most crude form of love, beginning of love. All on one plan was shaped and standardized under a dark dictatorship's breathless weight. So everything was either black or white, and black and white depending upon what the sheikh decided. So I had a very strange experience in Dubai. I was trying, when you go to a country, you want to know about the laws. He said, "Sir, sheikh is the law." I said, "What does it mean?" He said, "If he decides overnight, everything will change. So tomorrow there may be a different law altogether." I said, "Is it?" He said, "Yes. If he decide that people must wear only this dress, so it becomes a law. So you can't say that there is no Parliament Act and representation. He decides." So standardized and breadth, weight.
Now these lines, I'd like you to
Yes, they are very important
discuss
because
a bit. Very important.
yes, because we again often feel that the uncouth, the uncultured, the illiterate, they are the bad guys, and people who can speak well, who are well polished, who dress well, and outwardly look very smart or have risen high in professions, they are nice people. It's one of the when a Frenchman had come to India and he passed some very uncharitable remarks on Indians, and you know what mother said? Said, drunk by his arrogance, he doesn't realize that an average illiterate peasant in India is more evolved than the thinking elite of Europe. This was a remark. Because she said they are so inwardly open. So here Aurobindo is reminding us beings he met who looked like living men and climbed in speech upon high wings of thought. So they could discuss abstruse philosophies, scholarly people. But harbored all that is subhuman, vile, and lower than the lowest reptiles crawl. So we should not be carried away by these outward things.
Alok, when we first began Aurobindo, Mother said something so powerful to us. She said, "The simplest Indian villager is nearer in his heart to the divine than any Western intellectual."
Yes. And she said that's why that when you approach the local villagers, treat them with that due respect, and don't.
Yes.
So you see how we are so much impressed by external show of knowledge or capacity to speak, and then what is the difference between these brilliant minds? So how to distinguish between minds which are brilliant but luminously open towards the divine, and minds which are brilliant intellects but they are open towards darkness? So here is the mark. The reason meant for nearness to the gods. This is the utility. And uplift to heavenly scale by the touch of mind, only enhanced by its enlightening ray, their inborn nature's wry monstrosity. So they used reason very powerfully, very brilliantly, but to turn people towards evil deeds, to turn them away from divine, to turn them away from nobility and good and beauty and love and truth, or gave to each of them a perverse form. So this is the distinctions. And there are philosophies which may look very extremely intellectual, and the people are very impressed by it, but they have such a dark influence on human beings. I don't know, people may agree or disagree, but as a young medical student, somebody told me to read Jean-Paul Sartre. So I was reading all kinds of philosophies at that time. So I picked up a book, what was it? Being something. I'm even forgetting the name.
Oh,
but
yes, that's one of his most famous books.
it was so dark. At the end of it, I felt as if a load of darkness is on my head. I said, people like it. This leaves you with nothing. It's almost like, makes you feel that this world is, you can become a cynic after reading it. I said, this is celebrated as philosophy. Much that time I was not mature enough. I mean, 17-year-old, 17 and a half. Luckily, I had a background of Indian thought by then. So instantly I could sense that this is something so dark, palpably dark.
This whole existentialism.
Existentialism. And I said, it's a, later on I could see it is a perversion of Buddhist thought. Buddhist thought is so high. When Buddha speaks of nihil, it is amazing. And when he talks of, nothingness, it's like the dark end of things. But must say, intellectually rigorous. I mean, so that's a different thing. Often, a familiar visage studying, joyfully encountered at some dangerous turn, hoping to recognize a look of light, his vision, warned by the spirit's inward eye, discovered suddenly hell's trademark there. There it is. So that's it.
Yeah.
So you feel, there may be some light here. When you read through it, you see, oh my God, what is this? And there are a number of things. I mean, there are serials which come, there are books which have been written with this idea, but they take away from man whatever uplifting, noble, high impulse there is. And it's everywhere, this
But
degrading.
only Sri Aurobindo in the form of Aswapati could see this.
And by his grace, he can lend that vision
Yes.
to man, and man must develop, otherwise he'll be carried away.
Yes.
Or saw with the inner sense that cannot err, in the semblance of a fair or virile form, the demon and the goblin and the ghoul. And it may be interesting to note that, antisocial personalities, it's actually documented, their outer appearance can be very charming. They look very charming and very, people get impressed. That's why, they are heartless, absolutely cold.
You must have seen this in your years of psychology.
Oh, yes. Where does it end? One continues to see such being. I use a term for, such people. They are mannequins. There is nothing here. Only a fair outside. That's it. But, he is using the word. Semblance of a fair or virile form. The demon and the goblin and the ghoul. An insolence reigned of cold, stone-hearted strength. Strength is good. It's a divine aspect. It should be full of charity, generosity, kindness. You see, one of the things that I picked up from Mahabharata among many things was that don't hit at an enemy when he is, unarmed, when he is lying on ground. These are the values what really is strength. Don't do it. Because, he can't fight. It's a wrong thing to do. This was the code for the Kshatriya, for the samurai. A samurai would never attack if he had a sword and the other person didn't have a sword, he would throw it and say, you take it, let's fight an equal battle. But here it's a cold, stone-hearted, mighty, obeyed, approved by the Titan's law, the huge laughter of a giant cruelty, and fierce, glad deeds of ogre violence. And now another word he uses, in that wide, cynic den of thinking beasts. Thinking beasts. They can think, but thinking doesn't make you a man. Your consciousness may still be beast-like. And a word that mother cautions us, my child, never become a cynic. Look at appearances of the world, then you develop this idea that everything is bad, people are bad, this world is bad, only strength succeeds. And based on superficial things, that I see good people suffer. What do people talk about God's mercy? No, ultimately it is money. People develop such cynical ideas about life, which is so dangerous, so dark, so harmful. So cynic den, where all these thinking beings sat together and formulated this philosophy, cynicism. One looked in vain for a trace of pity or love. There was no touch of sweetness anywhere, but only force and its acolytes, greed and hate. So they were driven, their strength was driven by hatred, not by something high and divine. And there was no sweetness, no love, no harmony, no beauty.
I may have said this earlier, but sweetness was Sri Aurobindo's favorite word. It occurs more than 85 times in Savitri.
And to complement it, there is an aphorism where Sri Aurobindo says, if there is one thing which is farthest from the divine, it is cruelty. Though he says even that can be transformed and used, but cruelty. Similarly, he says sin. He says if there is one sin, it is selfishness and meanness. He says, but they too are universal, therefore they must be pardoned. He is so full of compassion. Mother reminds us that they will be, we were talking about religion today. You know what Mother has cautioned? What is the dangerous side of creating a religion around Sri Aurobindo? Many ways, but the worst ways says that there will be a religion built around people. Already there is an attempt by this false imitative Sri Aurobindo to build a religion around Sri Aurobindo, who in his name will proclaim about cruelty. And he says, but people must know that Sri Aurobindo's message is a message of love and compassion and hope and peace. He is great and beautiful and compassionate and divine. But they'll try to build a religion around God, cruel, thus thou shalt do. And Mother says, they come and show me the book, the Mother. And they tell me, Mother, see, it is written here. Truth and falsehood cannot stay in the same house. And they show me that he has written and you are not following it. It's there in Mother's words. And Mother has to tell them that, see, this is what they come and tell me. That divine grace cannot be with those. In this quote that Sri Aurobindo has written in the Mother. So she said we should be very careful.
Yes.
Because that's not the way of evolution, not the way of the divine. There was no help for suffering, none to save. One of the things that reminds me, Sri Aurobindo, that strikes me again and again, his endless compassion. He would be so forgiving, and even to use the word forgiveness sounds so low. Thieves, scoundrels. And every time Nirodha recounts that, we would be on the verge of punishing the person, and we'll finally go to Sri Aurobindo because he has to decide. And Sri Aurobindo will say, well, we can give him one last chance. And then Nirodha writes, and we know that this last chance will go on.
Yes.
Again and again and again. So many stories where, with endless compassion.
I had the personal experience with Mother in the Matrimandian Gardens nursery, and the boys had stolen a huge sack of mangoes and were gorging themselves on the mangoes. And so I wrote to Mother, and Mother said, well, if it's only food, they can be forgiven this time.
So many stories of her
Compassion. Sri Aurobindo's compassion.
Yeah. And at what level? Save. None dared resist or speak a noble word. Armed with the aegis of tyrannic power, signing the edicts of a dreadful rule, and using blood and torture as a seal. This man who recently went to jail, he used to actually use, you have to give your blood as a sign that you owe allegiance. And this very dark form of initiation used in very dark cults. Yeah. And people have used it. So very often people are very impressed by Subhash Chandra Bose slogan, you give me blood and I'll give you freedom. Well, it's not a very healthy, whatever its inner meaning would be. But freedom doesn't come at the price of blood to a man. If you have to offer blood, offer it at the altar of the Divine Mother. And you don't do it like this. There is, the life being given to the Divine. That is the path. So, darkness proclaimed her slogans to the world. A servile, blinkered silence hushed the mind. So nobody would dare to speak against the dictatorship. You see, when Kim, what is his name, Jong or
Jong.
whatever, Jong.
Yeah.
So when he is doing all kinds of things and all the generals are laughing and they are appreciating. It's so silly. But do they have a choice? Servile. They can't. They know if they have to survive, this is the only way they can survive. Otherwise, next they will be on the list.
Yeah.
So, or only it repeated lessons taught, while mitred, holding the good shepherd's staff. Falsehood enthroned on awed and prostrate hearts, the cults and creeds that organize living death and slay the soul on the altar of a lie. I mean, obviously the soul cannot be slain, but the effort is to make the soul captive and make it bow down and succumb to the lie. Otherwise, there is punishment. And that's why there are people who are not strong enough in the strength of the soul and they succumb and give in. All were deceived or served their own deceit. Truth in that stifling atmosphere could not live. That was it.
Yeah.
Their wretchedness believed in its own joy. And fear and weakness hugged their abject depths. All that is low and sordid thoughted, base, all that is drab and poor and miserable, breathed in a lax content its natural air and felt no yearning of divine release. And we can see, many of these nightclubs and parties and den where, Las Vegas. Somebody was asking me that, what do you think about the shooter in Las Vegas? I said, it's not worth thinking about. Equally, it's not worth thinking about who were the people there. I mean, it's all the same plan. Obviously, he was a psychopath. And what is that state where people enjoy this kind of a nightmarish life? They drink and they gamble and they live like that and full of that atmosphere. Fear and wretchedness, weakness. Their wretchedness believed in its own joy. All that is low and sordid thoughted, base, all that is drab and poor and miserable, breathed in a lax content its natural air and felt no yearning of divine release. That's why Mother says people mistake relaxation for this kind of indulgence. She says you should learn to relax in light, not in darkness. Arrogant, jibing at more luminous states, the people of the gulfs despised the sun. So it's a strange paradox. And sometimes geographically also we have strange paradoxes. I don't know. I was strangely struck and surprised. I said, look at the Gulf countries. That they have so much of sun as you cannot imagine. And they are digging for petrol, which will not last for another 30 years. I said, there is so much of sun. It's unimaginable. They have to create artificial rain. But, because that's the kind of energy you are used to. And people are aware it's not that. Perhaps one of the Emirate kings is actually thinking of doing something on a solar basis. But then the problem is that if they start solar, where will the money come from? Look at the paradox. People of the Gulf despite the sun. Because if you start drawing that, then everybody can draw that. Where is your hegemony on the money market? So it's very interesting. This is at a physical level, but of course psychologically also so true. A barriered autarky excluded light, fixed in its will to be its own grey self. It wanted its norm, unique and splendid type. It soothed its hunger with a plunderer's dream, flaunting its cross of servitude like a crown. It clung to its dismal, harsh autonomy. Cross of servitude like a crown.
Yeah.
Don't you know? I am helping you, I am giving you. I am serving. Without me, who will be there to serve the poor? So, mother says these people create more poor. Service is not that. Service is a joy of serving. You don't serve to flaunt it like a crown upon your head. But that's how these beings are. It clung to its dismal, harsh autonomy. A bullthroat bellowed with its brazen tongue, its hard and shameless clamor filling space, and threatening all who dared to listen to truth, claimed the monopoly of the battered ear. A deafened acquiescence gave its vote, and braggart dogmas shouted in the night. This is a very common experience you will have in Pondicherry. Time to time there are bandhs, and you will see near the post office somebody shouting something, others are listening, and then suddenly there is hooliganism. So you will know what this bull throated and people listening. Probably they are not interested in whatever is being told. They are interested in the 100 rupee note which they will get later on. Ashram was attacked by some of these people. And when some of these people were caught, why they do it? They don't understand anything to do with truth and light and great things. They said that we were given 100 rupees each and a bottle of liquor. That's it. So they will come in buses. And who are these politicians? And why do they serve them? Because they will in turn serve their interests. So it's very common. You'll see these bull-throated speeches. Plenty. In the last two lines. And braggart dogmas shouted in the night, kept for the fallen soul, once deemed a god, the pride of its abysmal absolute. So the fallen soul, who were the beings inhabited these worlds, some of them who were once what is called in the Vedas as Purvadevas, and the same truth they turned into its shadow. So freedom is a divine truth. That's why the divine loves freedom, wants to set us free. But what is meant by freedom there is the assertion of the ego and its ignorance, slavery to desire. That is called freedom. So everything which is, unity, brotherhood, they are wonderful truths, but they are inverted there. And the same truth are spoken of by these denizens of the night, which includes the fallen souls. So we'll stop here at a natural break and continue later on.